recording because I went to a concert last week. But also, I've been dealing with a medical issue. Yesterday, I went to the doctor. Sunday, I went to with my one of my roommates to the downtown Chicago because he wasn't able to celebrate with me for my actual birthday, which is on the 23rd of this month. He decided to take me out a couple weeks early, and we hit up Chicago, saw the sights. We went to Union Station, the train station, where they have restaurants inside the train station there. Then we went to Lake Michigan, Navy Pier, um, stuff like that. That video was up on my other YouTube channel, RBW King, and you can see that for yourself. But on Sunday, before me and my roommate took off, um, I felt a lump under my arm, and I was fearing for the worst because they tell you if you have a lump, it could be three things. It could be cancer, or it could be um, an infection, or there's something else. There was like one other thing. So when I felt the lump, I started thinking, okay, this is bad. I don't know what it is, but it hurt like hell. So I went to work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, trying to get through the pain, and I ended up leaving work early. So my check for next week is going to be shit because I only worked 3 days this week. I called off Thursday because the pain was beyond anything I could imagine, and I went to see a doctor because my UPS insurance kicked in. So I'm able to go to the doctor now with my UPS insurance, and I can pick and choose whatever doctor as long as it takes UPS's insurance. And most of them do. So, and a lot of places do take Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is what UPS's insurance is. And so when I showed the lady my arm, like where the pain was, the lump that I felt was a ball of pus, and it just kept growing and growing and growing and building up. And so she had to take a needle and stick it in to drain all that out, and it hurt like a motherfucker. But so I was medically excused from work today because I couldn't go in. Um, but enough of that. We're gonna get into the rest of the Mayan civilization that I was talking about 2 weeks ago. So we're gonna get back into the Maya civilization. Um, the Maya Now, the Maya civilization, one poorly studied area of the Maya folk art is graffiti, because a lot of their sites have been graffitied. So now the additional graffiti and that part of the planned decoration was incised into the stucco of interior walls. Um, Hello for the people that are joining in. Um, Now, the stucco of the interior walls, the floors and benches in a wide variety of buildings, including temples, residences, and storerooms. Now, um, graffiti has been recorded at 51 Maya sites, particularly clustered in the Petun Basin in southern Campeche and the Chines region of the northwestern Yucatan. Um, at Tikal, where a great quantity of graffiti has been recorded, the subject of matters include um, drawings, of temples, people, deities, animals, banners, letters, and thrones. Um, I don't know about that. Um, about the being the best dreamer yet. Graffiti was often inscribed haphazardly with drawings overlapping each other, and they display a mix of crude, untrained art and examples by artists familiar with the classic period artistic conventions. Um, Now, the Maya produced a vast array of structures and they have left an extensive architectural legacy. Um, Now, the Maya architecture also incorporates various art forms and hieroglyphic text. Masonry architecture built by the Maya evidences craft specialization in Maya society. Now, centralized organizations and the political means to mobilize a large workforce, it is estimated that a large elite residence of Copan required an estimated 10,686 man days to build, um, which compares to 67 man days for a commoner's hut. Um, It's further estimated that 65% of the labor required to build the noble residence was used in the quarrying, transportation, transporting and finishing of the stone used in construction, and 24% of the labor was required for the manufacture and application of limestone-based plaster. Now, altogether, it is estimated that 2 to 3 months were required for the construction of the residence for the single noble at Copan. Um, Now, using between 80 and 130 full-time laborers, a classic period city like Tikal was spread over 20 square kilometers, with an urban core covering 6 square meters, and the labor required to build such a city was immense, running into many millions of man-day power. Um, Now, the most massive structures ever erected by the Maya were built during the pre-classic period, but craft specialization would have required dedicated stonemasons and plasterers by the late pre-classic, and would have required planners and architects. And you can see this building here that was built by the Puic, right here. This was built by the Puic people, and you can see that, which is pretty amazing with this stuff. Also, you have urban design, which is a very big thing back then too. So let's get to that. Now many of the Maya cities were not formally planned, but they were subject to irregular expansion, and with haphazard addition of palaces, temples, and other buildings, most of the Maya cities um, tended to grow outwards from the core and upwards as new structures were superimposed upon preceding architecture. Now, Maya cities usually had a ceremonial and administrative center around that was surrounded by a vast, irregular sprawl of residential complexes. The centers of the Maya cities featured sacred precincts, sometimes separated from nearby residential areas by walls. These precincts contained pyramid temples and other monumental architecture dedicated to elite activities, such as basal platforms that supported administrative or elite residential complexes. Now, um, sculpted monuments were raised to record the deeds of the ruling dynasty. Now, the city centers also featured plazas, sacred ball courts, and buildings used for marketplaces and schools. Now, frequently causeways linked the center to outlying areas of the city. Um, Now, some of these classes of architecture formed lesser groups in the outlying areas of the city, which served as sacred centers for non-royal lineages. Now, the areas adjacent to these sacred compounds included residential complexes housing wealthy lineages. Now, the largest and richest of these elite compounds sometimes possess sculpture and art of craftsmanship that's equal to that of royal art. Now, here's a photo of reconstruction of the urban core of the Tikal in the 8th century. This right here. Now we're gonna go down for a little bit, and then this right here is spired brick with animal designs, from the Kamakako, which I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. So from there. Now, the ceremonial center of the Maya city was where the ruling elites lived, and where the administrative functions of the city were performed, together with religious ceremonies. It was also where the inhabitants of the and it was also where the administrative functions of the city were performed, together with religious ceremonies. But it was also where the inhabitants of the city gathered for public activities. Elite residential complexes occupied the best land around the city center, while commoners had their residences dispersed further away from the ceremonial center. Residential units were built on top of stone platforms to raise them above the level of the rain season floodwaters. I don't even have a basement. No children in my basement because I don't have kids here. Now, the Maya built their cities with Neolithic technology. They built their structures from both perishable materials and from stone. The exact type of stone used in masonry construction varied according to locally available resources. And this also affected the building style. Across a broad swath of the Maya area, limestone was immediately available. Now, the local limestone is relatively soft when freshly cut, but hardens with exposure. Now, there was a great variety in the quality of limestone, with good quality stone available in the Yusa Macinta region. Now in the northern Yucatan, the limestone used in construction was of relatively poor quality back then. Now, volcanic tuff was used at Copan, and nearby Quirigua employed sandstone. Now, in in Comalcalco, where suitable stone was not available locally yet, um, fired bricks were employed. Now, the limestone was burned at high temperatures in order to manufacture cement, plaster. Um, Lime-based cement was used to seal stonework in place, and stone blocks were fashioned using rope and water abrasion and with obsidian tools. The Maya did not employ a functional wheel yet, so all loads were transported on leaders, barges, or rolled on logs. Um, Now, heavy loads were lifted with rope, but probably without employing any pulleys. Wood was also used for beams and for lintels, even in masonry structures. Throughout Maya history, common huts and some temples continue to be built from wooden poles and thatch. Adobe was also applied, but this consisted of mud strength with straw and was applied as a coating over the woven stick walls of huts. Um, Now, even after the development of masonry structures in the southern Maya area, adobe was employed in monumental architecture when no suitable stone was locally available. Um, Now, the great cities of the Maya civilization were composed of pyramid temples, palaces, ball courts, causeways, patios, and plazas. Now, some cities also possessed extensive hydraulic systems or defensive walls. Now, the exteriors of most buildings were painted either in one or multiple colors or with imagery. Many buildings were adorned with sculpture or painted stucco reliefs. Um, Now, here's a photo of a Terminal Classic Palace complex in the northern Yucatan, and that's this building right here. These temples hold a lot of history if they're still standing. Now, if these temples are if the Maya temples are still standing, then they hold a lot of history with everything, which is great because I like that. Like, I love history, and I've always loved history. Um, so, second. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Now, these complexes were usually located in the site core, beside a principal plaza. Um, Maya, now the Maya palaces consisted of a platform supporting a multi-room range structure. Now, the term Acropolis in a Maya context refers to a complex of structures that were built upon platforms of varying height. Now, palaces and acropolises were essentially elite residential compounds. They generally extended horizontally as opposed to the towering Maya pyramids, and they often had restricted access. Um, some structures in Maya acropolises supported roof combs. Now, rooms often had stone benches for sleeping, and holes indicate where curtains once hung. Large palaces, such as at Palenque, could be fitted with the water supply, and sweat baths were often found within the complex or nearby. Um, Now, during the early classic, rulers were sometimes buried underneath the Acropolis complex. Now, some rooms and palaces were true throne rooms in the royal palace of Palenque, and there were a number of throne rooms that were used for important events, including the inauguration of new kings. Now, Palaces are usually arranged around one or more courtyards, and with their facades facing inwards. Some examples are adorned with sculpture. Now, some palaces possess associated hieroglyphic descriptions that identify them as the royal residences of named rulers. Now, there is an abundant evidence that palaces were far more than simple elite residences, and that a range of courtly activities took place in them, including audiences, formal receptions, and important rituals. Um, Now, this is the funerary temple in the Maya culture, almost like where they would put mummies at, like in Egypt. Egypt will be one video I'd like to do also as a video on Egypt, look and research in their history, because Egypt even has a lot of history behind it too. Um, Almost every state or country has some history to it. Um, Now, temples are sometimes referred to in the hieroglyphic text as Kuana, meaning God's house, um, which I've never heard it referred to as that, but you know. Now, temples were raised on platforms, most often upon a pyramid. The earliest temples were probably thatched huts built upon low platforms, but by the late pre-classic period, the walls were of stone, and the development of the corbel arch allowed stone roofs to replace thatch. Um, by the classic period, temple roofs were being topped with roof combs that extended the height of the temple and served as a foundation for monumental art. Um, Temple shrines contained 1 to 3 rooms, and they were dedicated to important deities. Such a deity might be one of the patron gods of the city or a deified ancestor. In general, all ancestors. Um, now, now the Maya were keen observers of the sun, stars, and planets. Now the E groups were a particular arrangement of temples that were relatively common in the Maya region. Now they take their names from the group E at at the um at the I'm not sure if I'm saying this right. Uaxicton. Um, this is what the build. This is what the place looks like. Like a temple right there. It's a sacred place of the Maya civilization, and that's what this looks like. Um, so you can see that there. Um, now, they consisted of three small structures facing a fourth structure, and they were used to mark the solstices and the equinoxes. Now, the earliest examples date to the early examples of this date to the pre-classic period. The Lost World complex at Tikal started out as an E group built towards the end of the middle pre-classic period. Now, due to this nature, the basic layout of an E group was constant. A structure was built on the west side of a plaza. It was usually a radial pyramid with stairways facing the cardinal directions, which I'm not sure what they mean by cardinal directions, but it faced east across the plaza to 3 small temples on the far side. And from the west pyramid, the sun was seen to rise over these temples on the solstices and equinoxes. Now, E groups were raised across the central and southern Maya area over a millennium, and not all were properly aligned as observatories, and their function may have been symbolic. Now, as well as E groups, the Maya built other structures dedicated to observing the movements of celestial bodies. Now, many Maya buildings were aligned with astronomical bodies, including the planet Venus and various other constellations in the sky. Now, the Caracol structure at Chichen Itza was a circular, multi-level edifice with a conical superstructure. It has slit windows that mark the movement of Venus. At Copan, a pair of stellae were used to mark the position of the setting sun at the equinox. Um, now, the Triadic pyramids, and here's a picture of a triadic pyramid, And this is at Belize. You can see that there. Pretty interesting. Now, the Triadic pyramids first appeared in the pre-classic period. They consisted of a dominant structure that was flanked by two smaller inward-facing buildings. Now, they were all mounted upon a single basal platform. Now, the largest known Triadic pyramid was built at El Mirador in the Petén Basin. It covers an area 6 times as large as that covered by Temple 4, the largest pyramid at Tikal. Now the three superstructures all have stairways leading up from the central plaza on top of the basal platform. No securely established forerunners of the Triadic groups are known, but that may have developed from the Eastern Range building of the E group complexes. The Triadic form was the predominant architectural form in the Petén region during the late pre-classic. Examples of Triadic pyramids are known from as many as 88 archaeological sites, but at Nakbi, there are at least a dozen examples of Triadic complexes, and the 4 largest structures in the city are Triadic in nature. So at El Mirador, there are probably as many as 36 Triadic structures. Examples of the Triadic form are even known from the Diesel Bilchotan in the far north of the Yucatan Peninsula and the highlands of Guatemala. The Triadic pyramid remained a popular architectural form for centuries after the first examples were built. It continued to be in use into the late classic period, with later examples only being found at the Uaxtlan, Karakol, Sebel, Nakam, Tikal, and Palenque. The Q Marcaj example is the only one that has been dated to the post-classic period. The triple temple form of the Triadic pyramid appears to be related to Maya mythology. I cannot tell you much about Maya mythology, but I could tell you more about Greek and Roman. But now this supposedly is a ball court. I don't know what a ball court is technically for. Right here is a ball court on the left and right side. This is a ball court in the Guatemalan highlands, and this one is a ball court of Chichen Itza. So you can see that there. So the ball court is a distinctive pan-Mesoamerican form of architecture. Now, although the majority of Maya ball courts date to the classic period, the early example is around 1000 BC in the northern Yucatan during the middle pre-classic period. By the time of the Spanish contract, ball courts were only in use in the Guatemalan highlands at cities such as Cumarjac and Ixmichi. Now, throughout Mayan history, the ball courts maintained a characteristic form consistent of an I shape, with the central plain area terminating in 2 transverse end zones. Now, the central plain area usually measures between 20 and 30 meters, which is 66 to 98 feet long in length, and is flanked by 2 lateral structures that stood up to 3 or 4 meters, which is 9 feet or 13 feet high in length, and the lateral platforms often supported structures that may have held privileged spectators. The Great Ball Court at Chichen Itza is the largest in Mesoamerica, measuring 272 feet long in length and 98 feet wide, with walls standing 8 meters, which is 27 feet high in length. Now, although the Maya cities shared many common features, there was a considerable variation in architectural style because each one had their own difference. Now, such styles were influenced by locally available construction materials, like climate, like when it comes to climate, topography, and local preferences. Now, in the late In the late classic, these local differences developed into distinctive regional architectural styles. In central Bhutan, the central Bhutan style of architecture is modeled after the great city of Tikal. The style is characterized by tall pyramids supporting a summit shrine, adorned with a roof comb and accessed by a single doorway. Now, additional features are the use of stela altar pairings and the decoration of architectural facades, lintels, and roof combs with relief sculpture of rulers and gods. Now, one of the finest examples of Central Bhutan style architecture is Tikal Temple 1. Examples of sites in the Central Bhutan style include the Ultan Ha, Kalak Mol, Homel, um, um, Ixkan, Nakam, Naranjo, and Yaksa. Um, Now, Puic. The example of the Puic style architecture is Uxmal. Um, the style developed in the Puic Hills of northwestern Yucatan during the Terminal Classic. It spread beyond this core region across the northern Yucatan Peninsula. Um, the Puic site replaced rubble cores with lime cement, resulting in stronger walls. And also, they strengthened their corbel arches, and this allowed the Puic-style cities to build freestanding entrance archways. The upper facades of buildings were decorated with pre-cut stones from mosaic fashion, and they were erected as facing over the core, forming elaborate compositions of long-nosed deities such as the rain god Shak and the principal bird deity. Um, Now, the motifs also included geometric patterns, lattices, and spools, possibly influenced by the styles from the highland Oaxaca outside the Maya area. In contrast, the lower facades were left undecorated, and roof combs were relatively uncommon in the Puic sites. Um, and these are also temples. What they call Now these are referred to as facade, meaning fake. Elaborate Shane-style facade at Hosham and false pyramids adorn the facade of a Rio Bec palace. I'm not sure where Rio Bec is. So, um, so the chain style of the Maya civilization is very similar to the Puic style, but it predates the use of the mosaic facades in the Puic region. It featured fully adorned facades on both the upper and lower sections of structures. Some doorways were surrounded by mosaic masks of monsters representing mountain or sky deities. Now, and also identifying the doorways as entrances to the supernatural realm. Some buildings contain interior stairwells that accessed different levels. Um, Now, the chain style is most commonly encountered in the southern portion of the Yucatan Peninsula, although individual buildings in the style can be found elsewhere in the peninsula. Examples of chain sites include Hoshab, Santa Rosa, Extampac, and Tabasquino. Um, Now, the Rio Back style forms a subregion of the chain style. Um, and it also features elements of the central Patan style, such as prominent roof combs. Now, its palaces are distinctive for their false tower decorations. They lack interior rooms with steep, almost vertical stairways and false doors. These towers were adorned with deity masks, and they were built to impress the viewer rather than serve any practical function. Such false towers are only found in the Rio Bec region, but Rio Bec sites include Chicana, Hormiguero, and Expujil. Um, the Yuso Macinto style developed in the hilly terrain of the Yuso Macinto drainage. Cities took advantage of the hillsides to support their major architecture, as at Palenque and Yaxchilian. Um, we're finishing up the Maya civilization of what I had talked about 2 weeks ago. Um, I only got through half of it, but now we're back to doing the rest. Now, when it comes to so like okay, so sites modified corbel bolting to allow thinner walls and multiple access doors to temples. So, as in Bataan, roof combs adorned printable structures. Palaces had multiple entrances that used post and lintel entrances rather than corbel bolting. But many sites erected stelae, but Palenque instead developed finely sculptured paneling to decorate its buildings. Now, there, um, now there's many multiple languages spoken throughout the world, but before 2000 BC, um, the Maya spoke a single language that was dubbed Proto-Mayan by linguists. Now, linguistic analysts of the reconstructed Proto-Mayan vocabulary suggests that the original Proto-Mayan homeland was in the western and northern Guatemalan highland, although the evidence for this is not conclusive. Um, Now, Proto-Mayan diverged during the pre-classic period to form the major Mayan language groups that make up the family, including Huastecan, Greater Kichian, Greater Q Anjobawan, the Mamian, um, the the Tez El Talan, Cholan, and the Yucatan. Um, Now, these groups diverged further during the pre-Columbian era to form over 30 different languages that have survived into modern times. Now, the language of almost all classic Maya texts over the entire Maya area has been identified as Cholan, but late pre-classic texts from the Khmer, the Khmer, now Juyu in the highlands also appears to be in or related to Cholawan. Um, Now, the use of the Cholan as the language of Maya text does not necessarily indicate that it was the language commonly used by the local populace, but it may have been equivalent to medieval Latin as a ritual or prestige language. Um, Now, this is a map of the Mayan language immigration routes, because I always have maps for different things. Um, okay, that was let's go back down here. Yeah, that was the one for the language. Now this is supposed to be a pages from the post-classic period, the Paris Codex, one of the less one of the few surviving Maya books in existence that's known to be in existence, because a lot of the stuff was destroyed. Um, um, Now the Maya writing system. Go back. Now, the classic Cholan may have been the prestige language of the classic Maya elite used in the interpolity communication, such as diplomacy and trade, but by the post-classic period, the Yucatec was also being written in Maya codices alongside Cholan. So now, once we get down here, writing and literacy, um, the Maya writing system is one of the outstanding achievements of the pre-Columbian inhabitants of the America. It's the most sophisticated and highly developed writing system of more than a dozen systems that developed in Mesoamerica. Um, the earliest inscriptions in identifiably Maya script date back to 300 between the years 300 to 200 BC in the Bataan Basin. Now, however, this is preceded by several other Mesoamerican writing systems, such as the Epi-Olmec and the Zapotec scripts. Um, Early Maya script had appeared on the Pacific coast of Guatemala by the late 1st century AD or early 2nd century. Um, Similarities between the Isthmian script and early Maya script of the Pacific coast suggest that the two systems developed in tandem. About the year 250 AD, the Maya script had become a more formalized and consistent writing system. Now, now the Catholic Church and colonial officials, notably Bishop Diego de Landa, destroyed the Maya texts whenever they were found, and within the knowledge of the Maya writing. But by chance, four uncontested pre-Columbian books dated to the post-classic period have been preserved. Now these are known as the Madrid Codex, the Dresden Codex, the Paris Codex, and the Maya Codex of Mexico, previously known as the Grolier Codex, which was of disputed authenticity until 2018. Um, the archaeology conducted at Maya sites often reveals other fragments, rectangular lumps of plaster and paint chips, which are codices. These tantalizing remains are, however, too severely damaged for any inscriptions to have survived, but most of the organic material having decayed. But in reference to the few extant Maya writings, Michael G. Coe stated, "The knowledge of ancient Maya thought most they of ancient Maya thought must represent only a tiny fraction of the whole picture, but for the 1,000 years of books in which the full extent of their learning and rituals was recorded, only 4 have survived to this date." Um, as though all that posterity knew of ourselves were to be based upon 3 prayer books and Pilgrim's Progress. Here is a script of the Maya script on at Kenkuin, and this is panel 3. It describes the installation of 2 vassals at Machikia by the Kenkuin king Taj Chanak. And this is a ceramic vessel painted with Maya script, and this is at the Ethno Logisches Museum in Berlin, Germany. Hold on here. I took a little bit of a walk earlier today, and I was sweating. I just wanted to get out the house, but now I'm back. Now, most surviving pre-Columbian Maya writings dates to the Classic period. Now, yeah, a lot of times it's hit and miss with my live stream. Some people tune in and others don't. It's a matter of when we catch it. Now, most surviving pre-Columbian Maya writings date to the Classic period and is contained in stone inscriptions from the Maya sites, such as stelae or on ceramic vessels. Other media include the aforementioned codices, stucco, facades, frescoes, wooden lintels, cave walls, and portable artifacts crafted from a variety of materials, including bone, shell, obsidian, and jade. Um, Now, the Maya also had their own writing system. Um, the Maya writing system, often called hieroglyphics, from a superficial resemblance to ancient, which was as the so the Maya writing system, also called hieroglyphs, is similar to the resemblance in ancient Egyptian writing, because also ancient Egyptians also used hieroglyphics to do their writing. Um, and it's also a logo syllabic writing system, and combining a syllabary of phonetic signs representing syllables with logogram representing entire words. Um, Among the writing systems of the pre-Columbian New World, Maya script most closely represents the spoken language at any one time. No more than around 500 glyphs were in use, some 200 of which, including variations, were phonetic. Um, Now, the Maya script was in use up to the arrival of the Europeans. Its use peaking during the Classic period. Um, in excess of 10,000 individual texts have been recovered, mostly inscribed on stone monuments, lintels, stelae, and ceramics. Now, the Maya also produced texts painted on a form of paper manufactured from processed tree bark, generally known by its Nahuatl language name Amotol, used to produce codices. Um, the skill and knowledge of the Maya writing persisted among segments of the population right up to the Spanish conquest. Now, the knowledge was subsequently lost as a result of the impact of the conquest on Maya society. Now, there is one language that's considered to be a dead language, and that's Aramaic. Um, Basically, nobody alive today can translate Aramaic language. Okay, so, now, the decipherment and recovery of the knowledge of the Maya writing has been a long and laborious process. Some elements were first deciphered in the late 19th and early 20th century, mostly the parts having to do with the numbers, the Maya calendar, and astronomy. Now major breakthroughs were made from the 1950s to the 1970s and accelerated rapidly thereafter. Now, by the end of the 20th century, scholars were able to read the majority of Maya texts, and ongoing work continues to further illuminate the context. Now, this is supposed to be a reading order of Maya hieroglyphic text consisting of 12 glyph blocks arranged in 2 double columns. Now, don't ask me how to understand that one because I don't understand hieroglyphs. Now, the logo syllabic script. Now, when it comes to the basic unit of Maya logo syllabic text, is the glyph block, which transcribes a word or phrase. The block is composed of one or more individual glyphs attached to each other to form the glyph block. With individual glyph blocks generally being separated by a space, glyph blocks are usually arranged in a grid pattern for the ease of reference. Epographers refer to glyph blocks from left to right alphabetically and top to bottom numerically. Now, thus, any glyph block in a piece of text can be identified. C4 would be a third block counting from the left and the fourth block counting downwards. If a monument or an artifact has more than one inscription, column labels are not repeated. Rather, they continue in the alphabetic series. If there are more than 26 columns, the labeling continues as A, B, etc., and numeric row labels restart from 1 for each discrete unit of text. Now, even though the Mayan text may be laid out in varying manners, generally it is arranged into double columns of glyph blocks. The reading order of text starts at the top left block A1, and it continues to the second block in the double column B1, then drops down a row and starts again from the left hull of the double column A2, and it thus continues in a zigzagging fashion. Now, once the bottom is reached, the inscription continues from the top left of the next double column, C1, where an inscription ends in a single unpaired column. So this final column is usually read straight going downwards. Now, individual glyph blocks may be composed of a number of elements. Now, these consist of the main sign and any affixes. Main signs represent the major and it says that they represent the major element of the block, and they may have a noun. There may be a noun, a verb, an adverb, an adjective, or a phonetic sign. Now, some signs are abstract. Some are pictures of the object they represent, and others are also head variants. So, okay, so affixes are smaller rectangular elements, and usually they're attached to a main sign, although a block may be composed entirely of affixes. Now, affixes may represent a wide variety of speech elements, including nouns, verbs, verbal suffixes, prepositions, and pronouns. Small sections of a main sign could be used to represent the whole main sign. Maya scribes were highly inventive in their usage and adaptation of the glyph elements. Hold on a second. Bitch. Excuse me. So now one of these is a sculpture of a scribe from Copan, Honduras, and the other picture over here is an illustration of a Maya scribe on a classic period vessel, and this is held at the Kimball illustration of a Maya scribe on a classic period vessel, and this is held at the Kimball Art Museum in Fort Worth. Now, although the archaeological records does not provide examples of brushes or pens, the analysis of the ink strokes on the post-classic codices suggests that it was applied with a brush with the tip fashioned from pliable hair. A classic period sculpture from Copan, Honduras, depicts a scribe with an ink pot fashioned from a conch shell. Excavations of Aquateca uncovered a number of scribal artifacts from the residences of the elite status scribes, including pellets and mortars and pestles. Now, scribes and literacy. Commoners were illiterate. Scribes were drawn from the elite. It is not known if all members of the aristocracy could read and write, although at least some women could, since there were representations of female scribes in Mayan art. Now, many scribes, the Maya scribes were called Ashtazib, meaning one who writes or paints. Now, there were probably scribal schools where members of the aristocracy were taught to write, but scribal activity is identifiable in the archaeological record Jasal Chan Kawi, the one who is the king of Tikal, and he was interred with his painting pot. Some junior members of the Copan royal dynasty have also been found buried with their writing implements. A palace at Copan has been identified as that of a noble lineage of scribes, but is decorated with sculpture that includes figures holding ink pots. Now, although it is not known, not much is known about the Maya scribes. Some did sign their work, both on ceramics and on stone sculpture. Now, usually only a single scribe signed a ceramic vessel, but multiple sculptors are known to have recorded their names on stone sculpture. Now, 8 sculptors signed one stela at Piedras Negras. However, most works remained unsigned by the artists, so nobody knows who actually made them. Now, even though my math and mathematics sucks, I was never good in math. Even for a Jewish person, I never was good in math at all. So So in common with the other Mesoamerican civilizations, the Maya used a base 20 bigesimal system, the bar and the dot counting system. And I will show you what that is here. That is this. The dot, the Maya numerals and the Maya numerals on a page of post-classic Justin Codex, and here's the Maya numerals going from 1 to 19 with the dots underneath them. I'm not sure what the dots represent. So the bar and dot counting system, that is the base of the Maya numerals, was in use in Mesoamerica by 1000 BC. The Maya adopted it by the late preclassic period, and they added the symbol for 0. This may have been the earliest known occurrence of the idea of an explicit zero worldwide, although it may have been later than the Babylonian system. Now, the earliest explicit use of zero occurred on monuments dated to 357 AD. In its earliest uses, the zero served as a placeholder, indicated an absence of a particular calendrical count. This later developed into a numeral that was used to perform calculation, and was used in hieroglyphic text for more than was used in hieroglyphic text for more than 1,000 years until the writing system was extinguished by the Spanish. Now, the basic number consists of a dot to represent 1 and a bar to represent 5. By the post-classic period, a shell symbol represented 0. During the classic period, other glyphs were used. Now, the Maya numerals from 0 to 19 used repetitions of these symbols. Now, the value of numerical was determined by its position as a numeral shifted upwards, its basic value multiplied by 20. In this way, the lowest symbol would represent units, and the next symbol up would represent multiples of 20, and the symbol above that would represent multiples of 400, and so on. Now, for example, the number 884 would be written with 4 dots in the lowest level, 4 dots in the next level up, and 2 dots in the next level after that. To give a 4 times 1 and a 4 times 20, you would take and times 2 would be 400. Would equal 2 times 4 would equal 884. Using this system, the Maya were able to record huge numbers. Simple addition could be performed by summoning the dots and bars in the two columns to give the result in a third column. Now, the Mayan calendrical system, in common with other Mesoamerican calendars, had its origins in the pre-classic period. However, it was the Maya that developed the calendar to maximize sophistication, recording lunar and solar cycles, eclipses, and movements of planets with great accuracy. In some cases, the Maya calculations were more accurate than equivalent calculations in the Old World. For example, the Maya solar year was calculated to greater accuracy than the Julian year. Now, the Maya calendar was intrinsically tied to the Maya ritual, and it was central to Maya religious practices. The calendar combined a non-repeating long count with 3 interlocking cycles, each measuring a progressively larger period. Now, these were the 260-day Tzolk'in, the 365-day Hum, and the 52-year calendar round, resulting from the combination of the Tzolk'in with the Hum. And these were also additional calendars, such as the 819-day cycle associated with the four quadrants of Maya cosmology, and that was governed by the 4 different aspects of the god Ka'wi. Now, the basic unit in the Maya calendar was 1 day or kin, and the 20 kin group to form a winal. The next unit, instead of being multiplied by 20, as called by the vigesimal system, was multiplied by 18 in order to provide a rough approximation of the solar year, hence producing 360 days. Now, this 360-day year was called a ton. Each succeeding level of multiplication followed the vigesimal system. Now, here you'll see the calendar. These are the long count periods. Quin, meaning 1 day. Wanel, 20. Ton, 360. Katan is 7,200 days, and that would be 20 years. Baktan means 144,000 days, and that's 394 years, which nobody would ever be alive by then. The Picton means 2,880,000 days. That would be 7,885 years, which nobody also would be alive. Kalabton means 57,600,000 days. That's 157,700 years. Kinchilton is 1,152 days, or that's 3,154,000 years. An alloton is 23 billion 40 million days or something like that. I don't know how to read that really. 63 million 80,000 years. Now the 260-day Tzolk'in that's provided in the as a basic cycle of Maya ceremony. And the foundations of the Maya prophecy, no astronomical basis for this count has been proved, and it may be that the 260-day count is based on the human gestation period. Now, this is reinforced by the use of the Tzolk'in to record dates of birth and provide corresponding prophecy. The 260-day cycle repeated a series of 20-day names with the number from 1 to 13 prefixed to indicate where in the cycle a particular day occurred. The 365-day Hab was produced by a cycle of 18 named 20-day Winals, completed by the addition of a 5-day period called the Wayab. The Wayab was considered to be a dangerous time when the barriers between the mortal and the supernatural realms were broken, allowing malignant deities to cross over and interfere in human concerns. In a similar way to the Tzolk'in, the named Winal, would be prefixed by a number from 0 to 19. In the case of a shorter Wayab period, the prefix numbers ran 0 to 4, and since each day in the Tzolk'in they had a name and a number, e.g., 8 Ajah. This would interlock with the Hab, producing an additional number and name to give any day a more complex designation. For example, 8 Ajal 13K. Such a day could only recur once every 52 years, and this period is referenced by the Mayanists as the calendar round. Now, in most Mesoamerican cultures, the calendar round was the largest unit for measuring time. As with any non-repeating calendar, the Maya measured time from a fixed starting point. The Maya set the beginning of their calendar as the end of a previous cycle of Baktons, equivalent to a day in the year 3114 BC. This was believed by the Maya to be the day of the creation of the world in its current form. Now, the Maya used the long count calendar to fix any given day of the calendar round within their current Great Picton cycle, consisting of either 20 Baktons, and there was some variation in the calendar. Specifically, text in the Pellenic demonstrate that the Picton cycle that ended in 3114 BC had only 13 Baktons, but others used a cycle of 13 plus 20 Bakton in the current Picton. Now, additionally, there may have been some regional variation in how these exceptional cycles were managed. Now, a full long count date consisted of an introductory glyph followed by 5 glyphs counting off the number of Baktons, Ka'ans, Tons, Winals, and Kins since the start of the current creation. Now, this would be followed by the Tzolk'in portion of the calendar round date, and after a number of intervening glyphs, the long count date would end with the Hab portion of the calendar round date. Now, although the calendar round is still in use today, the Maya started using an abbreviated short count during the late Classic period. The short count is a count of 13 Gatons. And the book of the Chalan Balam of Shumail contains the only colonial reference to classic count dates. Now, the most generally accepted correlation is the Goodman-Martinez-Thompson or the GMT correlation. Now, this equates the long date with the numbers 11.16 and then 0.0 and then 000 with the points in between them, 13 Ajal, 8 Zol with the Gregorian date of November 12th, 1539. Um, they the the epigraphers the epigraphers Simon Martin and Nikolai Grub argue for a 2-day shift from the standard GMT correlation. The spin-din correlation would shift the long count dates back to by 260 years. Now, it also accords with documentary evidence and is better suited in the archaeology of the Yucatan Peninsula, but it presents problems with the rest of the Maya region. The George Valiant correlation would shift all Maya dates back 260 years, and it would greatly shorten the post-classic period. But the radiocarbon dating of the dated wood and lintels at Tikal supports the GMT correlation. Now here's a representation of an astronomer from the Madrid Codex. Now the famous astrologer John Dee used an Aztec obsidian mirror to see into the future. We may look down upon our noses at his ideas, but one may be sure that in outlook he was far closer to a Maya priest astronomer than as an astronomer of our century, or an astrologer. The Maya made meticulous observations of celestial bodies. So this information was used for divination, and the first time I ever heard the word divination was in the Harry Potter movie for the third movie. So Maya astronomy was essentially for astrological purposes. Now, although Maya astronomy was mainly used by the priesthood to comprehend past cycles of time and protect them into the future to produce prophecy, it also had some practical applications, such as providing aid in crop planting and harvesting. The priesthood refined observations and recorded eclipses of the sun and moon and movements of Venus and the stars, and these were measured against dated events in the past, but on the assumption that similar events would occur in the future when the same astronomical conditions prevailed. Now, illustrations in the codices show that priests made astronomical observations using the naked eye, assisted by the crossed sticks as a sighting device. Now, the analysis of the few remaining post-classic codices that has revealed that at the time of European contact, the Maya had recorded eclipse tables, calendars, and astronomical knowledge that was more accurate at that time than any comparable knowledge that was from Europe. The Maya measured the 584-day Venus cycle with an error of just about 2 hours. The 5 cycles of the Venus equated to 8 365-day Hobbs calendrical cycles, and this period was recorded in the codices. Now, the Maya also followed the movements of Jupiter, Mars, and Mercury, and when Venus rose as the morning star, this was associated with the rebirth of the Maya hero twins. Now, for the Maya, the heliacal rising of Venus was associated with the destruction and upheaval. Venus was closely associated with warfare, and the hieroglyphic meaning war incorporated the glyph element symbolizing the planet. Now, the sight lines through the windows of the Karakul building at Chichen align with the northernmost and southernmost extremes of Venus's path. Now, the Maya rulers launched military campaigns to coincide with the heliacal or cosmical rising of Venus. Now, and this would also sacrifice important captives to coincide with such conjunctions. Now, solar and lunar eclipses were considered to be especially dangerous events that could bring catastrophe upon the world. In the Dresden Codex, a similar eclipse is represented by a serpent devouring the kin, meaning J hieroglyph. Eclipses were interpreted as the sun or moon being bitten, and lunar tables were recorded in order that the Maya might be able to predict them and perform the appropriate ceremonies to ward off disaster. Now, when it comes to religion and mythology, in common with the rest of Mesoamerica, the Maya region believed in the supernatural realm inhabited by an array of powerful deities who needed to be placated with ceremonial offerings and ritual practices. At the core of the Maya religious practice was the worship of deceased ancestors who would intercede for their living descendants in dealings with the supernatural realm. Now, the earliest intermediaries between humans and the supernatural were shamans. The Maya ritual included the use of hallucinogens for shaman, oracular police. Visions from the shaman were likely facilitated by consumption of water lilies, which were hallucinogenic in high doses. As the Maya civilization developed, the ruling elite codified the Maya world view into religious cults that justified their right to rule. In the late pre-classic period, this process culminated in the institution of the divine king, the Ajah, endowed with ultimate political and religious power. Now, the Maya viewed the cosmos as highly structured, and there were 13 levels in the heavens and 9 in the underworld, with the mortal world in between. Each level had 4 cardinal directions associated with a different color. North was white, east was red, south was yellow, and west was black. Major deities had aspects associated with these directions and colors. Now, many households interred their dead underneath the floors with offerings appropriate to the social status of the family. Now, there the dead could act as protective ancestors. The Maya lineages were patrilineal, so the worship of a prominent male ancestor would be emphasized, often with the household shrine. As Maya society developed and the elite became more powerful, the Maya royalty developed their household shrines into the Great Pyramids that held the tombs of their ancestors. Now, the belief in supernatural forces pervaded the Maya life, from the simplest day-to-day activities such as cooking to trade, politics, and elite activities. The Maya deities governed all aspects of the world, both visible and invisible. The Maya priesthood was a closed group, drawing its members from the established elite. By the early classic, they were recording increasingly complex ritual information in the hieroglyphic books, including astronomical observations, calendrical cycles, history, and mythology. The priests performed public ceremonies that incorporated the feasting, bloodletting, and incense burning, music, ritual dance, and on certain occasions human sacrifice. Now, during the classic period, the Maya ruler was the high priest and the direct conduit between mortals and the gods. It is highly likely that among commoners, the shamanism continued in parallel to state religion. But the post-classic religious emphasis had changed, and there was an increase in worship of the images of deities and more frequent recourse to human sacrifice. Now, archaeologists painstakingly reconstruct these ritual practices and beliefs using several techniques. One important, though incomplete, resource is physical evidence such as dedicatory caches and other ritual deposits. Shrines and burials with their associated funerary offerings. Maya art, architecture, and writing are another resource. And these can be combined with the ethnographic sources, including records of Maya religious practices that was made by the Spanish during the conquest. Now, here is a relief sculpture of a decapitated ball player, which I can barely see this. But this is at this is at the Great Ball Court at Chichen Itza. Now, when it comes to human sacrifice in the Maya culture, the blood was viewed as a potent source of nourishment for the Maya deities, and the sacrifice of a living creature was a powerful blood offering. By extension, the sacrifice of a human life was the ultimate offering of blood to the gods, and the most important Maya rituals culminated in human sacrifice. Generally, only high-status prisoners of war were sacrificed, with lower-status captives being used for labor. The important rituals such as the dedication of major buildings, projects, or the enthronement of a new ruler required a human offering. The sacrifice of an enemy king was the most prized, and such a sacrifice involved decapitation of the captive ruler. Perhaps in a ritual and reenactment of the decapitation of the Maya Maze god of the Maya Maze god by the death gods. In um so In 738 AD, the vassal king Kayak Chanyopat at Kurigwa captured his overlord Yoax Aksak Salajuan of Kopan, and a few days later he ritually decapitated him. Um, Now, sacrifice by decapitation is depicted in classic period Mayan art, and sometimes took place after the victim was tortured, being variously beaten, scalped, burned, or disemboweled. Um, Another myth associated with decapitation was that of the hero twins recounted in the Polpo Bowl Bua playing a ball game against the gods of the underworld. The heroes achieved victory, but one of each pair of twins was decapitated by their opponents. And this was common back then. Now, during the post-classic period, the most common form of human sacrifice was ripping your heart out. Um, Influenced by the rise of the Aztecs in the Valley of Mexico. The Aztecs is also something I want to do. Also, I want to do a video sometime in the next couple of weeks on the Aztec people. I just got to do more research on that one. So this usually took place in the courtyard of a temple or upon the summit of the pyramid. In one ritual, the corpse would be skinned by assistant priests, except for the hands and feet, and the officiating priest would then dress himself in the skin of the sacrificial victim, and they would perform a ritual dance symbolizing the rebirth of life. Archaeological investigations indicate that the ripping out of the heart sacrifice was practiced as early as the classic period. So hold on a second here. So when it comes to deities, you can see these couple things here. On the left-hand side is a classic period lintel, 25 from the Yax Chilean, depicting the vision serpent. Now, on the right is the post-classic ball marker at Mixco Viho, depicting Quag Yumat carrying Tolhil across the sky in his jaws, which I'm not sure what that's supposed to, what that reference is. The Maya world was populated by a great variety of deities, supernatural entities, and sacred forces. Now, the Maya world, so like I was saying, the Maya world was populated by a great variety of deities, supernatural entities, and sacred forces. The Maya had such a broad interpretation of the sacred that the identifying distinct deities with specific functions is inaccurate. Now, the Maya interpretation of deities was closely tied to the calendar, astronomy, and their cosmology. The importance of a deity and its characteristics and its associations varied according to the movement of celestial bodies. Now, the priestly interpretation of astronomical records and books was therefore crucial, since the priest would understand which deity required ritual appropriation, when the correct ceremonies should be performed, and what would be an appropriate offering. Now, each deity had 4 manifestations associated with the cardinal directions, each identified with a different color, and they also had a dual day, night, life, death aspect. Now, Itzamna was the creator god, but he also embodied the cosmos and was also simultaneously a god of the sun. Um, 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 Kan, Kan, Kanich, Kinich, Ahu was the day sun was one of his aspects. The Maya kings frequently identified themselves with Kanish Ahu, and Itzamna also had a night sun aspect, the night jaguar representing the sun and its journey throughout the underworld. Um, Now the four Palatons supported the corners of the mortal realm. In the heavens, the Bakhubs performed the same function, as well as their four main aspects. The Bakhubs had dozens of other aspects that are not well understood. Um, but the four Chaks were storm gods controlling thunder, lightning, and the rains, almost similar to Zeus in Greek mythology, or Jupiter in the Roman. The nine lords of the night each governed one of the underworld realms. Other important deities included the moon goddess, the maze god, and the hero twins. The Popol Vuh was written in the Latin script in early colonial times, and was probably transcribed from a hieroglyphic book by an unknown Quiche Maya nobleman. It is one of the most outstanding works of the indigenous literature in the America. The Popol Vuh recounts the mythical creation of the world. Now, the legend of the hero twins, and the history of the post-classic Quiche kingdom, deities recorded in the Popol Vuh include Hanapu, believed by some to be the Quiche maze god. Now, in the triad of deities led by the Quiche patron Tuhul, and also included the moon goddess Awilix and the mountain god Jakawitz. Now, now this is common with other Mesoamerican cultures. The Maya worshipped feathered serpent deities. Such worship was rare during the classic period, but by the post-classic, the feathered serpent had spread to both the Yucatan Peninsula and the Guatemalan Highlands. Good question. I don't know, but I do believe that we can find the dragon somewhere. Not a Komodo dragon, but an actual real dragon. Now, so in Yucatan, the feathered serpent deity was Kukulkan. Among the Quiche, it was Kuagomats. The Kukulkan had its origins in the classic period war serpent. Now the Waxahachie Klakhan Yuba Khan and had also been identified in the post-classic version. Now, so basically, some of the stuff has been identified as the post-classic version of the mission serpent of classic Maya art. Now, although the cult of Kukulkan had its origins in these earlier Maya traditions, the worship of Kukulkan was heavily influenced by the Quetzalcoatl cult of the central Mexico. Likewise, Cuauhtémoc had a composite origin, combining the attributes of Mexican Quetzalcoatl with aspects of the classic period Itzamna. With agriculture, the ancient Maya had diverse and sophisticated methods of food production. It's believed that shifting cultivation Sweden, agriculture provided most of their food, but it's now thought that permanent raised fields, terracing, intensive gardening, forest gardens, and managed fallows were crucial to supporting the large populations of the classic period in some areas. Now, indeed, evidence of these different agricultural systems persists today, which means they're still being used. Raised fields connected by canals can be seen on aerial photographs. Contemporary rainforest species composite has a significantly higher abundance of species of economic value to ancient Maya in areas that were densely populated in pre-Columbian areas and times. And pollen records and lake sediments suggest that maize, manioc, sunflower seeds, cotton and other crops have been cultivated in association with deforestation in Mesoamerica since at least the year 2500 BC. Now, maize was a staple of the Maya diet, and maize is almost similar to corn. You can see that here. Yeah, I do gotta get my hair cut eventually. It's getting long. So, the basic staples of the Maya diet were maize, beans, and squash. Now these were supplemented with a wide variety of other plants either cultivated in gardens or gathered in the forest. And Gioia de Saran, a volcanic eruption, preserved a record of foodstuffs that were stored in Maya homes. Among them were chilies and tomatoes. Now cotton seeds were in the process of being ground, perhaps to produce cooking oil. But in addition to basic foodstuff, the Maya also cultivated the prestige crops such as cotton, cocoa, and vanilla. Cocoa was especially prized by the elite, who consumed any chocolate beverage. Cotton was spun, dyed, and woven into malleable textiles in order to be traded. The Maya had a few domestic animals, like dogs were domesticated by the year 3000 BC, and the Muscovy duck by the late post-classic. Isolated turkeys were unsuitable for domestication, but they were rounded up in the wild and penned for fattening. All of these were used as food animals, and dogs were additionally used for hunting. It's possible that deer were also penned and fattened. There are over 100 different Mayan sites that were spread across 5 countries: Belize, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico. Now, the 6 sites with particularly outstanding architecture or sculpture are Chichen Itza, Palenque, Uxmal, and Yaxchilan in Mexico, Tikal in Guatemala, and Copan in Honduras. But other important but difficult to reach sites include Calakmul and El Mirador. The principal sites in the Puic region after Uxmal are Kaba, Labna, and Sayal. And Sayul. In the east of the Yucatan Peninsula are Koba and the small site of Tulum. The real Beck sites of the base of the peninsula include Beckham, Chicana, Cohun Lake, and Uxpahul. The most noteworthy sites in Chiapas, other than Palenque and Yaxchilan, are Banam Park and Tonia. In the Guatemalan highlands are Ixmichi, Kami Naljuyu, the Mixco Bejo, and the Q Marjak, also known as the U Talian. In the northern Patan lowlands of Guatemala, there are many sites, apart from the Tikal, that access that is generally difficult to reach. Now, some of the Patan sites are Dos Pilos, Cebol, and Axton. Now, important sites in Belize include Altanha, Caracol, and the zoo Zontinunich. When it comes to genetics, hold on here. I'll find my arrow here. Oh, there we go. Okay. So researchers in 2024 analyzed the genomes of ancient individuals from the Mayan city of Chichen Itza dating to around 500 to 900 AD, and they compared it with data elaborated from blood samples taken from 68 present-day individuals from Mexico. The results revealed that they were grouped together with modern Armenian populations, especially the present-day Maya, based on the PCA and admixture and analysis. The 68 modern-day inhabitants were average modeled as 92% indigenous American component, with 7% of European genetic contribution and 3% and 0.3 .03 African ancestry. Of course, there are a lot of museum collections. Now, there are many museums across the world with Maya artifacts in their collections. The Foundation for the Advancement of Mesoamerica Studies lists over 250 museums in its Maya museum database, and the European American Association of Mayanists lists just under 50 museums in Europe alone. There might be one. There might be one in Illinois, which is where I live at. And we have just reached the ending. So if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, Rusty the King. I also have another YouTube channel called RBW King, which you can also check out. They're both the videos are both centered on two different things. They're not the same, but if you also want to check me out, I also have a Flip channel. Flip is similar to YouTube, but you get paid for videos that you post, but you don't need a big following. So that helps me out a little bit. Also, so for I'm not gonna have a video on the 23rd of next week, which is not this Monday, but the following Monday. I'm not gonna have a video up because it's my birthday on the 23rd, and I'm gonna be hanging out with a friend of mine, so we're not gonna be here. So we got that going on. But so let me know what I'm also taking recommendations. Let me know what videos you want me to put up, and I will get to them as soon as I can. But these are some of the videos I have up that I want to do videos on: Jesus, God, the Achaemenid period, Santa Claus, and we also got Nostradamus and the Aztec people. Nostradamus was a guy that used to predict all these disastrous events, and he was actually a person, and he actually, and almost every prediction that he made came. So for videos that we're talking about, what are your guys' opinion on Nostradamus? Nostradamus is a guy I want to get to other than the Aztec religion. Aztec religion, that might be the Maya religion. Let me see, because they're both kind of the same thing. I also do want to get a video on a whole bunch of things. I'm gonna have to start taking notes about videos that I want to do, and we'll get to that as soon as we can. Let's see if we have anything on the Aztec Empire. Okay, so they do have so we do have something on the Aztec Empire. So these are the choices that we're gonna have once I get this done. So let me start saving some of the sites here so I don't lose them. Let me get back to. Okay, so here's what we're gonna probably do videos on eventually down the line, but I try to space my videos out, so it'd be a couple more weeks before I put another video up. But these are my choices: Jesus, God, the Achaemenid period, Santa Claus, Nostradamus, and the Aztec people. Eventually, like I said, I'll be taking notes and taking suggestions on what you guys want me to talk about. And like I said, I'll get to them as soon as I can, because I'm not going to always get to them. And also because I won't have a video up on the 23rd, it might be a couple days after that I will have a video up. Just let me know what you guys think, and if you actually enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button for more videos like this, and we'll go from there. And I'll see you guys again in a couple weeks.